So in the previous video, we found the arguments in an article, we found the premises and conclusions, and we wrote the arguments in standard form. Now we're going to analyze each argument. And that should be easy because we have a clear understanding of what the premises and conclusions are. In your analysis, you want to do the following. Take it argument by argument and answer these questions. Is the argument an evidence-based argument as opposed to explanations? If it's an evidence-based argument, look at the data. Is it factual data? Why do you trust the data? Is the argument an explanation-based argument, like our third argument in this case? Do the premise statements seem correct? Do you trust these premises that they're stating? Are there any assumptions or implied premises behind the argument? And then finally, for each argument, do the premises logically lead to the conclusion? That's what you want to do for each argument. And remember, in our case, we have basically 3 arguments. You can read the entire analysis that I've attached below, but let's look at the arguments together. First of all, P2. Is this an evidence-based or explanation-based argument? Well, it's an evidence-based argument. There's a couple of facts here. The facts came from a respected organization, the Copenhagen Consensus. So it's evidence-based. Why do I trust the facts? In this case, because I trust the economists and I trust that they trust the Copenhagen Consensus. Do the facts support the conclusion? Yes. These studies show that nutrition is important to global welfare. The second argument, similarly, is evidence-based. There was a study. They found all this stuff about the benefits of nutrition, early childhood in Guatemala. It was a large study and it was long-term. So that is why I trust it. Again, also they gave the credentials for Hadanat, which were strong credentials. Another reason to trust it. So long-term study by a credentialed researcher. The one assumption I have to make is that this was a randomized controlled study. So if it wasn't randomized, if they just gave certain children nutrition and then came back 30 years later and saw how well they did, they might not, it might not be a good conclusion if, for example, all the children were from a certain neighborhood that was fairly wealthy anyway, or a certain neighborhood that 5 years later a big company came in and everybody all of a sudden had jobs. You have to make sure that in the design of the study things were randomized so that the study results are solid. I'm trusting the economist and Hadanat to have done that, since I myself did not check the study. The third argument we've already talked about. It's an explanation-based argument. It says, why is nutrition, why is nothing happening? Why are there no programs? And they gave us 3 reasons. They didn't put facts behind the reasons. They said the poor are politically marginal. That seems like a reasonable statement to me. They say that health, agriculture, sanitation, and welfare are government departments, but nutrition is not a government department. Again, they didn't list governments for me and what their different departments were, but I will take them at face value. That seems like a reasonable statement. UN doesn't have a Department of Nutrition. That's easily fact-checked. So because of these 3 reasons, there aren't as many nutrition projects around the world as there should be. Definitely an explanation-based argument. The facts seem reasonable. They seem to support the conclusion. And finally, the last argument is that there's been a lot of talk, but not so much done. Again, facts-based. They told me about the talk that's happened. They gave me some specific data on the talk that's happened. They gave me some specific problems about things not actually happening, money not being spent. And so the conclusion they've supported with their premises, there's been little follow-through on the nutrition studies. With the facts they gave me in the premises, they've supported that conclusion that there's been little follow-through on nutrition studies or programs. So you can read through the analysis on your own. In each case, I explained why I thought the argument was strong or not, and they were all pretty strong. I explained whether it's evidence or explanation based, And I also, in a couple of them, noted the assumptions that were underlying the argument. I didn't have to analyze P1 or P8 because they weren't really arguments. They were just sort of framing the article. So that's it. Now it's your turn to analyze the arguments in an article, find the premises and conclusions, evaluate the arguments. I hope this was helpful. Have fun. Bye-bye.